lots happening over the next few hours. Obviously, we've got Oasis probably reforming at 8 o'clock. We've got Keir's speech from the Rose Garden. We'll be talking about these wonderful tributes to Sven. But can we start with crime and punishment? Because is it just me, but is there a disconnect in this country now between our attitude to crime and punishment? I mean, you had these extraordinary exemplary sentences for the rioters and the so-called keyboard warriors, you know, some of them getting 3.5 years in jail, which pretty much got public approval. You could hear the cheers out there. And now you've got these reports on the front page of the Times and the Telegraph today saying that actually, and the whole other section of crime and punishment, we're not doing it. We're just letting people off.
That's where the disapproval is. The disapproval wasn't by and large on heavy sentences for rioting. If you're going to attack the police, people just because they're Muslim of colour, loot shops, burn down citizens' advice bureaus,
libraries,
brick mosques, whatever. And you incite that violence. Well, you've got to, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. But of course, shoplifting. I mean, it matters to people. It matters to people if you own a shop, you're a small shopkeeper, or you work in a shop and people come in and they're just stealing with impunity, nothing you can do. Where in the northeast, I know of a shop that's closed down because of shoplifting, and it was getting raided every day, time after time, just people going in and taking everything they could from the shelves. Now, shoplifting normally goes up when there is a cost of living crisis. People are hard up. Some people are desperate, but others are just knowing it's a crime where you're not going to get punished, and so therefore they're just trashing shops.
And there are effects for everyone. OK, so the small retailer, it's going to destroy their business potentially, but it's putting up costs for everybody because my little local Tesco now has a security guard the whole time. Those wages have to be paid. The stuff that gets nicked is coming out of the profit, so that's going to put prices up. So they're hurting all sorts of people, and the police have to take it seriously because shoplifting is a big problem. We've
got a terrific family pharmacy which has been going for about 40 years close to where I live, and they're on their knees because of shoplifting. They've hired 2 security guards.
That's outrageous.
It's happening every day. Their profit margin is virtually evaporated because of their losses, which aren't insured, and the fact that the police just won't come and stop these guys.
And it's very scary for staff working in shops that they've got some big bloke, maybe on drugs, maybe have been drinking. What are they going to do?
And doesn't care.
Doesn't care.
Labour's the new Labour government said it's going to reverse the.
They should.
What was really a Conservative amnesty for anyone who took anything less than 200 quid. Cops wouldn't go. Now, police are overstretched. It'll play into Starmer's speech today, where he talks about fixing the rot of the last 14 years of the Conservative period, because you can't fix it overnight. But somehow, if you just allow this to happen, it'll get worse. It'll just get worse and worse and worse. And other people will think, well, why should I pay? Why should I be the only person paying in the shop, the only honest person, when everyone else is just walking out with whatever they want?
But it's also burglaries which aren't investigated. Burglaries are really, really distressing for families who experience them if you're on your own or whatever. And
your house,
maybe you're even asleep and they're in your home. And the police aren't investigating them either. They really do have
And what
to
do we think about this new policy, according to the Telegraph anyway, to allow people who've been clearly guilty of knife crime or sexual offences, sexual assaults, if they say sorry to the victims, they get let off?
Police community resolutions, which, you would think that in certain circumstances might be appropriate, but when it's knife offenders, sex offenders, I mean, we know prisons are full, don't we? That's why there's an issue with finding places for them, presumably.
Yeah, and prison has to... Look, of course, part of prison is rehabilitation, but prison's also got to put very unsavoury men, particularly with knives, bang them up inside to protect us from them. We don't want them at loose in the community. An apology's not enough.
I'd want to see the detail of the cases. If somebody...
I know what you're saying. Don't have a knee-jerk response.
If a bloke's patted a woman on the bottom and she doesn't want that you cannot do that. That's wrong. If it's a resolution around that, or somebody has not stabbed somebody but's taken a knife out the house and been waving it around in the garden for whatever reason...
Because it does say they should be restricted, these ones, to low-level crimes.
Then sometimes community resolution with other forms of engagement and, notify social workers, you look at the record of the people and so on, that can be a way forward. But instinctively, you recoil if you think people with knife crimes and sex offenders are somehow judged to be getting away with it scot-free.
And the thing is also, I think people base their opinions on the police and how things are going by their personal experiences of crime. And it's these ones that are sort of going to directly affect them. And if they think that justice isn't being served, that's when people, I think, are most upset.
Yeah, and look, I know people being harassed on social media is really unpleasant. Of course it can be, and the police want to investigate, but there does seem to be more emphasis now on that sort of crime, anecdotally, because when do you ever see a copper in the community? You don't.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
I think social media is only a small proportion, but if people are inciting hate and people who get abuse relentlessly are bullied online, that matters, and I can see there is a role for the police. I mean, on these sex crimes, the successful prosecution rate for reported rapes is minuscule.
Well, it's under 5%. It's under 5%.
Absolutely horrific. And the police have to decide where their resources are. They are stretched.
They can't cover everything, can they? They can't be there for every crime. They can't then be across every crime, can they?
No, and well,
they don't have money to do it.
If they investigate, then there's such a delay in bringing people to court. I mean, it's absolutely huge. And they get to court, there are more delays. Often they just aren't the staff. Then you get the end of the process, as you see now. It's please don't jail these people. They should go to jail, but don't jail them because we haven't got a cell.
But what I find really puzzling, I mean, when you read headlines and the backup material in the Times report, for example, like this, is we seem to have learnt nothing from the experience of New York several decades ago, the famous broken windows policy. That if you get in at ground level, at petty crime, you actually stop it from turning into a conflagration.
Absolutely.
A firestorm.
Zero tolerance.
Pardon?
Zero tolerance.
It works as a policy. It's been shown in a big city like New York.
That's the whole thing when you talk about the broken windows thing, that if people see somewhere with broken windows, then the crime is more likely to happen there because they don't take care of that area.
The Blair, it was a cliché, but it was tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. But I think that's right. Why are people committing crimes in the first place and try and stop them committing crimes? And if they commit crimes, you've got to deal with them with interventions, whether that is community resolution or a fine or sending to prison in some cases. You've got to do it. You've got to have a system that works.
Let's move forward to Starmer's speech in the Rose Garden a bit later on this morning. I guess he'll be entitled to pat himself on the back in terms of the way that the government dealt with the riots and encouraged heavy sentencing, exemplary sentencing. Will he, do we think, will he extend that as a principle into law and order generally, or will he rest on his laurels?
No, he can't rest on his laurels. Look, he's only been in power fight. He's going to congratulate himself that he's first Prime Minister, Labour leader to win an election since 2005. I don't think they've had a particularly good start, actually, although I think on the riots...
On the riots they did.
On the riots, yeah, because, look, they did. They got on with it, and there's some criticism they were a bit slow to do a Cobra meeting, but that's all window dressing anyway. No, on the riots they were fine. I think there are other issues, but he's going to talk today about how they've got to fix the worst economic car crash in modern British history, which I don't think is quite right, actually, because inflation is much lower now than when the Tories got into power in 2010, and we're in growth, and also unemployment is much lower.
Yeah,
Kevin...
Inflation's nudged up to 2.2, but it's a lot lower than it was when it hit more than 11. Growth the last 2 quarters it's actually been there. Given, if you look across the 14 years, wages had their worst squeeze since Napoleon Bonaparte was Emperor of France.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
It's a factual case.
Really?
Yes,
really?
I'm afraid it's a factual case.
Okay. Right.
Economic growth over the last 14 years...
Was the Office of National Statistics around then?
...was lower than the previous 14 years. The national debt is about the size of the economy now, much bigger than inherited from Labour in 2010. We know we just talked about the criminal justice system, how it's broken. Look at the NHS, near record waiting list. He's got to come up with a plan on how he is going to improve life. Now, it's all very well to say I've inherited all these problems from the Tories. Yeah. That's true. That's why people kick the Tories out and put Labour in, albeit on a small share of the national vote. But it's what is your plan for going forward? He's also got to avoid own goals like the winter fuel allowance abolition, which came out of the blue.
You turn on that?
I think they'll have
He's
to
got
be.
to, haven't they?
I think they'll have to be, because it's all very well saying millionaires shouldn't get it, but the 10 million people, the majority of them...
not millionaires,
are not millionaires. Some are on as little as £220 a week, and you are taking away up to £300 a year from them. Now, there's nothing fair about it. You can't balance the books on the backs of poorer people, and I'm afraid that's what he is doing. It's an own goal, and if they don't... If they don't resolve it and they bring in a new system and allow other people to claim it, I don't care if the king loses his, but I do care that somebody on a small occupational pension of a few quid a week.
But you can see the pictures in the
it.
headlines, can't you? If they don't U-turn on this, in the first cold snap that we get in the coming winter, you can see what it's going to be like.
When energy bills are going up.
Particularly as the energy cap has been...
Absolutely.
So suddenly, people are not just losing up to £300, the cap is going to add another £300. It's going to be nearly £500 for some of these households who are not anything like wealthy. They're struggling already. We've already seen charities. I never thought it would happen within 3 weeks for Labour government, like Age UK saying people will have to choose between eating and heating. Is that what people voted for with the Labour government after 3 or 4 weeks?
But also, you know, people didn't vote for tax rises, but we know what's going to happen, don't we? That tax is going to have to go up in some form.
Oh, that's fine, though. It depends which taxes you put up and who on.
So sweet, Labour.
If you close...
Fine to put up taxes.
If you close inheritance tax loopholes that are exploited by the wealthiest to avoid their fair dues, I think that's fair enough. If you put up capital gains tax so it's on a level or around a level of income tax, I think that's fair enough. Why should people making money from shares be paying a lower rate of tax than people who are working hard?
A lot of people already getting in touch this morning are sort of saying, well, hold on, you know, they've made a big deal about doing things differently, not putting up tax, restoring trust and hope in politics, and actually we haven't seen that much of it yet, have we? We've seen sort of excuses about, oh, it's the last lot that caused all this.
Yeah, and
it's going to take time to build things back up.
And if we talk about trust, of course, a lot of the big attacks on the Tories were been in power for a long time, sleaze, which often happens when a party has been in power for a long time. An extraordinary row at the weekend over the biggest donor to the Labour Party in recent times, Lord Ali, who, by the way, gave £20,000 to Sir Keir Starmer to have some nice smart clothes during the general election campaign.
Glasses.
And smart glasses, where Kevin and I might have gone to Specsavers.
It's not a good look, though.
And he's given a free pass to Downing Street.
Questions about why he's got this Downing Street pass when he's given a lot of money to the Labour Party, including
why he had it. He hasn't
Starmer.
got it anymore. He should never have been given it in the first place. That's an error. They've gone in, somebody's made a mistake.
Well, it expires next month, doesn't it?
But the real question of trust is delivering on the big promises. And those big promises are you've got to make people better off. You've got to make the country fairer. You've got to fix the NHS.
Hang on, you're sliding off this point about...
You say you're
sliding off the point about perception.
And already people are seeing stories like this.
Yeah. It's a crony, sleazy row within 7 weeks of being in power.
The Prime Minister of this country is wearing free suits and wearing free glasses.
And he could have been the one to authorise this pass. We don't know, because we haven't been told.
I doubt. I think if you come in as Prime Minister, you've probably got bigger things to do than decide who gets a pass.
Well, we don't know.
Somebody is
his name is being mentioned in the paper.
We don't know. There are little people living on the moon, but we don't think they are. But he's not going to...
The point here is, why did Wahid, Lord Ali, have a pass in 2010? Is it because he gave at least £500,000 to the Labour Party and £20,000 for free clothes and glasses for the Prime Minister? Almost certainly yes. Because why else?
Well, he was organising an event, and all parties organise events in Downing Street. It was an organising event.
He had a party in the Downing Street Rose Garden.
You don't need a pass.
But was it a mistake for Keir Starmer to accept free suits and free glasses from a Labour donor? It doesn't look good.
No, I can't see why you need to spend that amount of money on...
Didn't look that special.
£2,000 for glasses. It seems an awful lot of money for glasses.
How very man of the people, Charlotte. £2,000 for glasses.
We're all going to be looking at what glasses he's wearing when he gives his speech later, aren't we?
£10.
Well, if I'd be cracking jokes. Your glasses, you wouldn't need the winter fuel allowance. I would.
Passes for glasses. It's going to stick that line.
You open yourself up to things.
Given that
Looking at your glasses now to see how much
£10, they are from Specsavers. This suit I bought in 2017 from Ted Baker.
Well, the opticians are available.
But I just wonder about the quality of advice that Keir Starmer has been getting of late, because if I was his advisor and he was saying to me, should I accept these glasses, do you think? Well, I don't think it's a good idea, Sir Keir. I think you should buy your own. As you say, go to Specsavers. It's a better look.
It was in the
cost of living crisis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cost of living crisis. The Labour leader who earns, as a leader of the opposition, he's on £150,000, £160,000 a year as well. So he's not exactly on the living wage, is he? He can afford his own suits and his own glasses. He didn't need to do it.
No. We will wait to see what appears in the speech later when that happens from Sir Keir Starmer. Something else we must talk about. It's on the front page of The Guardian today. Staggering rise in anxiety among children. There's a lot of talk about children's mental health and also in developments to do with mental health as well. NHS 111 is now going to be offering mental health support for the first time. This is people who are in crisis can call and speak to a trained professional. So we've got Dr. Hilary joining us now for more on this. Good morning to you, Dr. Hilary. I mean, it's just sort of, you know, we've got that headline there about the staggering rise in anxiety among young people, and we know, no doubt, that there is a mental health crisis, isn't there? And there hasn't been the help for people. It does take a long time to get that help. How much of a difference do you think it will make having this 111 service being able to offer mental health support?
Well, the NHS Director of NHS Mental Health Services, Claire Mitchell, I think her name is, has said that she's tried very hard to recruit experienced people, clinicians and nurses trained in mental health. So one would hope that those people phoning will get urgent help when they need it by either being assessed there and then or being visited by crisis teams or being referred to local help facilities. But you're right, there has been an incredible rise in anxiety, particularly in young people. Something like one child every 3 minutes is being referred right now to child and adolescent mental health services. That's 4,000 a week. And these services are overwhelmed and understaffed currently. So one would hope that NHS 111 offering help for people with mental health issues there and then would make a difference. But it remains to be seen whether they've got the staff available, whether it will make an appreciable difference, or whether it's just window dressing. But certainly something urgent needs to be done.
What's behind this rise in anxiety amongst young children? I mean, you must see it as a practising GP. What's happening? What's happening to us as a society? Why are so many more children becoming nervous?
Well, it's twice as high as it was even before the pandemic, just a few years. And I think that one of the reasons is social media. I think it's a platform for bullying. I think it means that notifications inform children of every stabbing, every act of terrorism, of the war in the Middle East and Ukraine. I think they're bombarded by things that we weren't as children, and the age of innocence is almost gone. I don't think they're protected from these things. And I have to say that even though I work in the media, I think the media is partly to blame by feeding them a menu of uneducational films. It's just entertainment. It's just salacious, so-called entertainment. That's my personal view. I think television could be used for more educational purposes. But I think children are bombarded by bad news. And they're not protected from it in any way. And we need more help for them in school. We need more help for them in general practice, which is, under the cosh, as we know. We need more help in all areas where they can access good quality help with sympathy and understanding and time.
I agree with you completely about social media. I personally feel that we're on the brink of a great global debate about this because I think it's a huge threat to us as a group of societies. If you think about it, there are children in primary playgrounds, kids of 8, 9, 10, who are actually accessing on their phones, and a lot of them have got smartphones, they're accessing beheadings. They're looking at beheadings in the playground on their phones, the kinds of images which, as an adult, I would never want to see. And these kids are being exposed to it without any control at all. Would you agree? I mean, you said that you think social media is at the source of one of these trends in anxiety. Would you say that it's possibly the main source?
Yeah, I would. We've had discussions recently about the fact that platforms like Meta, who control Instagram and Facebook, are putting out fake messages, who use images of people who aren't actually themselves. And this is very confusing for people looking at these images, looking at these words. And nothing should be posted, in my opinion, in social media unless it's verified. But there is no control over these platforms, and it's getting worse and worse.
Dr. Hilary, while we've got you, can I just ask quickly for your reaction? We've got news this morning as well. Patients DIY slings to avoid A&E queues. The Lib Dems have been looking into this, and a quarter of people needing A&E care in the past 2 years have decided against it for fear of long queues. Nearly 1 in 5 say they'd ignored NHS 111 or GP advice to go to hospital, and a lot of them are just trying to do it themselves at home instead. I mean, obviously, there are certain cases where that could work, but it's a bit of a worry, isn't it, that people are having to patch themselves up because they're worried about the length of queues?
Yes, and it doesn't surprise me at all. It's been happening for some time. People just don't want to spend 8 hours in an A&E or whatever, and so they think if it's unless it's very serious, they try and treat themselves at home. Dentists are saying the same thing. Dentists are saying that they're treating people who've used pliers, had to remove loose teeth or super glue to put in crowns again. They're not shocked. I'm not shocked. Certainly, people are using homemade slings a lot of the time if their limb is injured, and treating wounds themselves. And most of the time they get away with it. But of course, things can go wrong and wounds can get infected. Broken bones can be missed. There can be damage. Any kind of delay in treatment means that there can be complications down the line. But the reason it's happening is because services are being overwhelmed. But it's been happening increasingly. I had a friend of mine turn up on my doorstep on a Sunday not so long ago who mashed their hand in a water jet machine, hadn't switched off the rotor inside. We're trying to fix it, and literally the skin was hanging off his fingers. And the reason he was there was because he didn't want to spend 8 hours in A&E. I did it myself.
Well, you suffer for your art.
Handy to have a friend like you. Dr. Hillary, thanks very much for talking us through this. Something I wanted to pick up, actually, you know, another thing in the news has been about this fire in Dagenham.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've got the report on Grenfell, haven't we, coming out next week. And I was absolutely staggered to hear some of the things that have been coming out from this. Obviously, there's an investigation underway right now. There were 45 fire engines there, 225 firefighters, this huge fire at a block of flats. Luckily, I mean, 2 people were taken to hospital and they're being treated, more than 80 evacuated, and that was sort of the seriousness of the damage done to people. But we hear stories about a fire escape being padlocked, no alarms going off, unsafe cladding being looked into. It's shocking, isn't it, that was left like that?
7 years on.
I know.
7 years on.
And that cladding, we know, it went up on buildings all over the country. I think it was in the 70s, 80s. It's still there.
Still there.
And local authorities either haven't got the resources all the time. No. They've got to get it down.
They knew about issues
they did.
here, and it wasn't taken action.
And it's amazing that nobody was killed.
Michael Gove was supposed to be sorting this out, and he came forward with some proposals. But do the tenants pay? Does the council pay? Do we pay as the public? Do the developers pay?
Developers put it up in the first place. Because I say a lot of this goes back to the 70s.
No, people got places they can't sell. They've got dodgy cladding on and they can't
I have family members who are in exactly that position. They've been wanting to sell for 3 years now, and they can't because they can't get the report to say whether or not the cladding on their apartments is safe or not.
Is it going to take another scandal like Grenfell to sort this out?
Almost certainly.
Because that's the thing, you know,
we are where we are
now. This time round, wasn't it? But it could have been a lot more serious for people.
That was the whole issue of deregulation and building standards, which was a mad place for us to go as a country.
Let's talk about Sven. There's that expression, isn't there? You'll miss me when I'm gone. Were we really... I mean, he's had a wonderful send-off in the papers this morning, wonderful write-ups and a reassessment of his record. Were we quite fair to him when he was actually managing England? Were we a little bit too judgmental about the fact that he didn't lift much silver, if any silver, for us?
Look, there would seem to be... if people talk to me about Sven, I just think more about his love life, I'm afraid.
Well, and
I'm afraid that's the point, because there was Ulrika, there was
quite a lot
Italian
of
lawyer, very fiery Italian lawyer.
Of his relationships, his personal life.
There was the woman he had an affair with at the FA. That's what... I mean, he was the first England football manager, actually, whose bedroom antics transcended the board at the football pitch, if you like. I mean, and that's what I know more about. I don't know if he was a good football manager or not.
He wasn't particularly, was he? He kept getting the quarter-finals, and that was it. Gareth Southgate is massively outshone him. Mind you, he's outshone everybody since Sir Alf Ramsey in 1966.
Wasn't all that a lot to do with luck? I mean, when you get to that level, when you get to a penalty shootout, luck does enter the equation.
Yeah, well, he must have been unlucky a long time, but he had that so-called golden generation, but they were all players that had massive egos and didn't seem to play together. But no, I think he'll be remembered because, one, he was the first foreign men's England football manager, but second, he was just a nice guy and he was very engaging, and you see that when he talks of, you know, don't be sad, smile, when he can see his own end coming. His days are numbered by cancer. God, it really pulls at the heart.
That was massively poignant, wasn't it? And I think when you're then recording a video and, you know, he talked about the fact that the documentary team had gone out and they just left him to sort of have this final message, and you think, oh, my goodness, you know, imagine knowing that it's that imminent,
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
have something that you know is going to mean that you're not going to live longer than a few months.
Yeah.
You know, it must be
Incredibly-
so hard to get your head around it.
But he
I
was
just,
incredibly dignified,
that
wasn't
scene,
he?
he was,
Right to
and
the
you know
end.
how lovely that he could. He did that Legends game, didn't he, at Anfield? Because
Yeah.
he was a massive Liverpool
Yeah.
fan, and I suppose it does give you the time, doesn't
Yeah.
it? You know, David Beckham went to see him in his home.
Yeah, and he took bottles of
share
wine
those
which
moments.
were dated from significant moments in his footballing career, like when Beckham was in the quarterfinals.
Yeah,
and, I mean, he was clearly the footballers who worked for him, played for him,
Very
really
fond
loved
of
him
him.
and
Loved him,
respected
yeah.
him.
Now, let's just finish on something we'll be discussing later. In Australia, it's now against the law for a boss to telephone an employee out of working hours.
It's coming
you
here,
can't-
isn't it?
You can't do it, and it's probably
coming
going to
here.
come here.
It's my
Do
Angela
you think
Rayner.
journalism might be an exception?
Well, there will be exceptions, but people do.
Your
and
boss rings you out of hours all the
And it will
time.
come here to some extent. You should have a right not to be harassed at home by bad bosses.
Cool,
that doesn't
necessarily mean it's harassment from
No,
the boss.
no, but look, the law will be sensible. And then you'll always get a few people who want to go the other way.
Yeah.
You will either making the calls or receiving the calls, but you should have a right to be able to essentially go home and switch off if you've got a job where you just go in, you do it, and that is
What
it.
do you make of it, Andrew? Do you think this is going to... How do you think it'll be welcomed? Bosses be thinking,
Well-
no, I should have a right to ring my employees.
How are you going to enforce it? How are you going to enforce it?
Well, hopefully we'll have stronger trade unions so they can take up the legal cases of people who are
It's
exploited and bullied.
unenforceable.
So
It's
would you would
ridiculous.
both be taking calls from your bosses?
Well,
out
my
of
boss
hours,
calls
then?
me quite often. I don't think Kevin's boss bothers to ring him at all. Why would he? Doesn't ring him in the day, let alone after hours.
There'll be a code and a guide, and you'll be able
Right.
to make some
And you can
calls,
always switch
but
your
not...
phone off.
Yeah,
And you can always not
exactly.
pick up the call.
Don't
When
pick
you
up
see
the
it's
call.
your boss, you
Yeah,
just
but you
don't
don't
pick
always
up.
know what it is, and then if the boss is able to say you didn't pick up my call,
this
why
government-
didn't you do that?
And
You're
then
fired.
it'll be no emails
Right.
either, and then no text
Come on.
messages.
We just need a balance, and we
We
need a
are-
sensible balance.
We
and
are
that's
getting calls
what
in
the
our
law
ears
would
from
go
our
for.
boss right now.
Saying
to
enough of
say,
Kevin.
boss of the programme, to say, yeah,
Enough
that's
of Kevin.
That's
to be said any
enough.
Is
day.
this your last programme again?
But it's good to
Thank
see you
you
both back in
both
on.
very
Nice to
much.
see you.
It's
See you
been
tomorrow.
lovely to have you back.